Process of inflammation. Stepping on a dirty, rusty nail would cause an inflammatory response. After the nail has punctured the skin and driven pieces of sock, shoe, soil, and rust, as well as microorganisms deep into your tissue, inflammation begins. First, vasoconstriction of the venules surrounding the puncture wounds occur. Vasoconstriction is a decrease in the diameter of a vessel. These tiny veins, venules, constrict for about 15 to 30 minutes to isolate the contaminants within the site of injury to protect other surrounding tissues. Second, chemicals like histamine are released within the injury site, initiating vasodilation that increases blood flow, causing swelling, redness, and heat. The increased blood flow flushes the wound of foreign matter. Following the increase in permeability of the blood vessels due to chemotaxis, blood flow slows and leukocytes migrate to the vessel walls. Chemotaxis is the movement of white blood cells to an area of inflammation in response to the release of chemical mediators by neutrophils, monocytes, injured tissue. Chemotaxis is the movement of white blood cells to an area of inflammation in response to the release of chemical mediators by neutrophils, monocytes, and injured tissues. Phagocytosis is a process in which phagocytes, neutrophils, monocytes, and macrophages engulf and destroy microorganisms, other foreign antigens, and cell debris. At the same time, a blood clot forms to stop the initial bleeding, and a scab forms to wall off the inflammatory process. A lesion is a specific pathological structure or functional change brought about by disease. During the process of inflammation, an abscess may form. An abscess is an inflamed area of pus that is walled off by a membrane. An abscess is an inflamed area of pus that is walled off. Walled off is the key term to know, by a membrane. Abscesses wall off the inflammatory processes within a fibrous capsule to protect surrounding tissue from further damage. Ulcers are open sores or lesions of skin or mucous membranes accompanied by sloughing, inflamed, necrotic tissue. A vesicle is a blister-like elevation of skin containing serous, serous fluid. A furuncle, which is also known as a boil, is an abscess or pustular infection of a sweat gland or hair follicle. A pustule is a small elevation of the skin containing pus. A carbuncle is an abscess of the skin formed by the merger of two or more furuncles. So, a vesicle is a blister-like elevation of skin containing serous fluid. A furuncle, which is also known as a boil, is an abscess or pustular infection of a sweat gland or a hair follicle. A pustule is a small elevation of the skin containing pus. A carbuncle is an abscess of the skin formed by the merger of two or more furuncles. Pus is a protein-rich fluid containing white blood cells, especially neutrophils, and cell debris produced during inflammation. Pus commonly is caused by infection with pus-forming pyogenic bacteria such as streptococci, staphylococci, gonococci, and pneumococci. Inflammatory exudates. An exudate, which is any fluid released from the body with a high concentration of protein, cells, or solid debris, oozes through the tissues into a cavity or to the surface. Escape of blood from the blood vascular system is known as hemorrhage. And hemorrhagic exudates contain blood. Serous exudates are rich in proteins and contain white blood cells, while a purulent exudate is primarily composed of pus resulting from infections. The ultimate goal of inflammation is resolution, which is defined as the termination of the inflammatory response, with the affected part returning to its normal state. Okay, edema. Edema, which used to be known as dropsy back in the day, is a local or generalized condition in which the body tissues contain an excessive amount of tissue fluid. Edema may result from 4 primary causes. Number 1, increased permeability of capillary walls. Number 2, increased capillary pressure due to venous obstruction or heart failure. Number 3, inflammatory conditions. Or number 4, fluid and electrolyte disturbances. Edema can be caused by increased permeability of capillary walls, which allows excess fluid to leach out into the extravascular tissues. Obstruction in veins can also cause edema due to an associated increase in capillary blood pressure. Other causes of edema include heart failure, lymphatic obstruction, kidney failure, inflammation, electrolyte disturbances, malnutrition, starvation, and toxins. Anasarca is severe generalized edema. Anasarca is severe generalized edema. Ascites is the accumulation of fluid in the abdomen. Remember, ascites is just edema of the abdomen. Hydrothorax is edema in the pleural cavity. And hydropericardium is an accumulation of fluid in the pericardial sac that surrounds the heart. So hydrothorax is edema in the pleural cavity, and hydropericardium is accumulation of fluid in the pericardial sac that surrounds the heart. Pitting edema is edema usually of the skin of the extremities. When pressed firmly with a finger, the skin maintains the depression produced by the finger. All right, hyperemia. Hyperemia is increased flow of blood in an area of the body. Its 2 forms are active hyperemia and passive hyperemia. Active hyperemia is increased arterial blood supply to an organ for physiologic reasons. It occurs during exercise when the blood flows to the muscles. Passive hyperemia is the engorgement of an organ or tissue with venous blood resulting from inadequate venous drainage. The presence of excess blood in the liver and other abdominal organs is an example of passive hyperemia associated with congestive heart failure. Passive hyperemia causes a reddish-blue discoloration of the affected parts because venous return is impaired. As the venous blood becomes deoxygenated, the discoloration, which is known as cyanosis, is accentuated. The congestion of capillary beds due to severe cases of passive hyperemia is related to the development of both edema and microscopic hemorrhaging. Cyanosis of the fingernail bed can be observed by gently squeezing the finger at the base of the fingernail to prevent the blood from draining from the tip of the finger. As the blood fills the capillaries under the fingernail, they become congested due to the mild pressure on the venous blood vessel, causing cyanosis under the fingernail. Ischemia and hypoxia. Ischemia is a deficiency of arterial blood flow to an organ or tissue, while hypoxia is a decrease in the level of oxygen within a tissue. So hypoxia is a decrease in the level of oxygen within a tissue. Ischemia is a deficiency of arterial blood flow to an organ or tissue. Examples of sometimes fatal ischemia include ischemic heart disease, which can cause myocardial infarctions, and transient ischemic attacks in the flow of blood to the brain, which can be as mild as fainting or severe as a fatal stroke. Ischemia, which is too little blood flow, will eventually result in hypoxia, which is too little oxygen. Thrombosis. Thrombosis is the formation of a blood clot, and the blood clot is referred to as a thrombosis. Thrombosis is a stationary blood clot, and it has the potential to fragment in the bloodstream. Embolism. An embolism is the sudden obstruction of a vessel by debris. You gotta remember this. Embolism is the sudden obstruction of a vessel by debris. An embolism is caused by an embolus, which is a free-floating object in the bloodstream, such as blood clots, cholesterol-containing plaque, bacteria, cancer cells, amniotic fluid, fat from the marrow of broken bones, and injected substances like air bubbles. Embolisms can be life-threatening. Hemorrhage. One of the most common forms of injury to the circulatory system is bleeding, which is known as hemorrhaging. A hemorrhage is defined as the escape of blood from the blood vascular system. 4 common causes of hemorrhage include trauma, vascular disease, high blood pressure, hypertension, and diseases of the blood. Petechia. Petechia are antemortem, pinpoint-sized hemorrhages of small capillaries in the skin or mucous membranes. Petechia result from areas of superficial bleeding into the skin, appearing as round pinpoint-sized dots that are not raised. So this is only when you're dead. Remember, petechia is antemortem. Ecchymosis is a scientific name for a common bruise, like a black and blue mark. Large areas of ecchymosis are associated with blood clotting disorders. Epitaxis. Epitaxis is the scientific name for blood coming from the nose. So it's basically a bloody nose. Epitaxis is a bloody nose. The word hematitis comes from the Greek hemi, which means blood, and tysis, which means spitting. Hematitis is the coughing of bloody sputum from the respiratory tract. So hematitis is the coughing of bloody sputum from the respiratory tract. Hematemesis, Hematemesis, is the vomiting of blood. The bleeding is usually from the upper gastrointestinal GI tract, including the upper small intestines. Melena. Melena is black tarry feces caused by the digestion of blood in the gastrointestinal tract and is common in the newborn. Hematuria is the presence of blood in the urine. Hematuria is the presence of blood in the urine. You can see it in the word hema and urea. Exsanguination is massive bleeding from anywhere in the body. Typically, the term exsanguinate refers to the loss of blood to the point of death. Postmortem conditions associated with disturbances in circulation. The arterial embalming of the deceased is contingent on proper distribution of arterial embalming fluids through the blood vascular system. If the deceased died due to complications associated with circulatory disturbances, it is important for the embalmers to recognize the possible effects such disorders may have on the embalming process. There are 8 postmortem conditions that may have implications on the embalming of persons who die due to circulatory disturbance. Diminished circulation, edema, abscess, hemorrhage, emaciation, dehydration, rapid decomposition, and discoloration. Okay, last one is hematoma, is a swelling consisting of a mass of extravascular blood, which is usually clotted and confined to an organ, tissue, or space. The word neoplasia literally means new growth, from neo, new, and plasia, growth. The study of tumors or neoplasms is called oncology. Not all tumors are cancers, and those that are not are referred to as benign. Malignant tumors are known as cancers, derived from the Latin word for crab, because they infiltrate tissues with crab-like extensions.